Hello my sweet friends, welcome back. I have had this idea for the longest time and ironically I just keep putting it off, which is just funny because this is a reading vlog where I am going to try and read a few books that I have been avoiding. I'm sure many of you can relate, but there are just multiple books on my physical TBR that for some reason or another I have just been putting off. I've been avoiding. I'm scared of them. Whether that's because I've heard bad reviews or it's just a really long book or a genre that I don't normally reach for. Like there are so many reasons as to why I may not pick up a book, but I feel like once I've put like a roadblock up in my mind, that's kind of it. I just avoid it. And so I thought this would be a good opportunity where I kind of force myself to read just a couple that I've kind of just like blocked out in my brain. And I feel like it always feels so good to read a book from your physical TBR that has been on there for a really long time. And so that's hopefully what I'm going to be doing over the next week or so. And we are going to start off very strong with Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I think I got this in April and obviously it's October. So it hasn't been like a ridiculous amount of time, but pretty much ever since I've got this, I've been putting it off. And I don't really know why, because a lot of my friends love this. I've heard a lot of great reviews about it. It has won a bunch of awards. Like I don't really have any reason to put this off apart from it's just like a genre that I don't normally reach for. And I was just kind of like scared that I wouldn't like it. Sometimes I get scared that I'm not going to like a book that a lot of people love and I'm going to like let people down. But the fact of the matter is we all have different tastes. And that is what makes reading fun, because we all have different opinions. So this is the first book we are going to try and tackle. Also, this may or may not be my book club's pick, and we may or may not be meeting next week to discuss this book, and I may or may not have not started it yet. Actually, that's a lie. I did start it yesterday. We don't have a lot of time to read this. I have put it off. I have procrastinated until almost the last minute. I feel like I've put it off for a while, but like not so long that I'm gonna have to rush it. Like I feel like I can still take my time with this. I have like 5 days until book club, so hopefully I can read this over the next few days. Like I mentioned, I started this yesterday. I think I'm about 60 pages in, and to be honest, I'm actually enjoying it way more than I thought I was going to. I didn't think I would dislike this book. Like I honestly thought I would like it, but I'm enjoying it even more than I thought, and I'm so intrigued because if it continues the way that it is currently, which again, I just started this, so like I don't want to get my hopes up too high, but like if it continues, this could be a 5-star read for me. Like it is just giving me those feelings, and I feel like with a 5-star, you just know, and it's giving me those feelings. Obviously, it could let me down. I could change my mind. We have a lot of pages to still read. Also, with my book club, we make it a rule where we're not allowed to discuss the book with each other until we get to book club. And I think 2 out of the 4 girls have finished this book, and I have no idea how they feel. Like, I'm so intrigued to know how we all feel about it, because it could be a situation where everyone hated it, or everyone loved it, or half of us loved it, half of us hated it, and I'm so intrigued to discuss this one. But let's continue reading, and I guess we'll just see how I feel. We have a very sleepy Winston here today. He has pretty much been sleeping all day. We went on a really long walk this morning, and ever since then he has just been basically napping, which I'm kind of jealous of. Like, what an incredible life. We've also been tucking him in, making sure he is all cozy. How you feeling, buddy? Like the fact that his head is like on the pillow. You're kidding. You're literally kidding me. Sorry for bothering you, bud. I am obsessed with this writing. I don't know like what it even is about it, but it just works with my brain. Like I feel like sometimes you just read books and you're just like that's how your brain feels reading it, because the writing just like clicks with your brain. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. It just like flows so easily in my mind. Also, if you don't know what this book is about, let me give you like a quick little synopsis. Obviously, I'm not that far into it, so I don't even really know what the point of it is. I think this is just like general fiction, maybe literary fiction. Let's see what Goodreads has to say about it. Literary fiction. Okay. But in the beginning of this book, we meet Sadie and Sam. Both Sadie and Sam are children, and they're spending a lot of time in the hospital, and they kind of just like end up running into each other in the games room of the hospital. And I feel like they just become friends in the way that like children become friends, where you're just kind of in the same situation and suddenly 10 minutes later you're best friends. And they really bond over playing video games together, and they just spend a lot of time together. And from what I've gathered, we're just going to follow, I'm assuming, many decades of their lives and just what they get up to. That sounds so boring, but I promise you it's not. I'm so fascinated by it, and I don't know why, but I think they're going to either develop a game together or multiple games together. I don't really want to say much more than that, because I feel like it's one of those books that you don't want to know a lot about. You just want to like dive in and like see it for yourself. And I feel like I've tried to avoid reviews of this book as much as I can because I prefer to go into a book not knowing too much. But yeah, we're just following these characters as they live their lives, and I'm hoping there's a lot of discussion around friendship. I feel like there already has been a bit, but I feel like that's something that I wish we got more like discussion around in books. Like obviously there's a lot of books where there's like found family or romance, but I feel like even with found family, which is just like friendship, I feel like it's often only portrayed, or mostly portrayed, really positively. And I think in this book we're going to see kind of the highs and lows of friendship, and I'm really intrigued to see what that's like because I feel like that's quite realistic. Like yes, in romantic relationships there are highs and lows and couples have arguments and they either overcome them or break up or whatever, but I feel like that also can happen in friendships, and I feel like I just never read about the layers and the complications of friendships. So I'm hoping that this discusses that more, but even if it doesn't, I'm really enjoying it so far, really enjoying the writing, really enjoying the characters. I feel like this is gonna break my heart at some point. I don't know why or how, but I feel like it's just one of those books where I'm gonna cry, and I'm scared because I really like these characters, and if something happens to any of them, I'm gonna be very mad. So I guess we'll see. I just realized that I haven't updated you on my thoughts on this book, and I am a little over halfway now, so it probably would be good if I actually updated you. I'm at page 236, and honestly, I feel kind of the same as what I said right at the beginning. I feel like a lot of the time, if I'm really going to enjoy a book, I can tell within the first, even like 50 pages. Not always, obviously. Like sometimes I start off feeling fine and then I like it more and more as it goes on. But a lot of the time I can just like tell. I feel like sometimes you just like click with certain authors' writing and sometimes you don't. And I feel like this one I just like clicked with, which is really interesting because I've heard quite a few people just be like, oh, I just like couldn't get into this, which is fair. Obviously, again, we all have different opinions, different tastes, but for me, I feel like I just like fell into the story and it all just flows so well, which is also interesting because we're jumping like back and forth in different timelines. Like halfway through a chapter, we'll just get a random, Winston is being a drama queen, so he's joining us. Are you just a baby? Are you just a little baby? It's okay. There's some construction going on, so there's a lot of noises. It's okay. But as I was saying, it kind of jumps back and forth in terms of timeline. Halfway through a chapter, you might just get like a flashback to one of the main characters like during their childhood or something, but for some reason it just flows so well to me and I don't find myself getting confused at all. It doesn't feel clunky. It just flows. I don't know, when I'm reading it, I'm just so consumed by it and I feel like I can see everything happening and just I feel so a part of it. And it's also interesting to me because this is written in third person, and sometimes with third person it can be a little bit hard to feel super connected to the characters, but in this book, whichever character is being discussed, like I feel like I'm in their head, which is also another interesting thing about this book because we have our two main characters, which are Sadie and Sam, but then occasionally throughout a chapter we might get an insight into another character and really be able to see what's going on inside another character's head, which I love that. I'm also scared because I feel like I'm gonna end up crying at some point. I haven't felt the need to cry yet. There've definitely been like some sad parts, and I also feel like I really feel the emotions that the characters are feeling. Like I really, like when they're sad, I can feel it. I just feel very connected to this book, I guess, which is just super interesting. But I have a little bit of time now, so I think I'm gonna sit down and try and get a little bit further through this. Today is Monday, book club's on Wednesday, and I'm busy like all day Wednesday until book club, so I need to finish this today or tomorrow, but it will probably be tomorrow. Like I don't think I'm gonna finish it today. I don't think I've ever cut it this close for book club. Okay, besties, today is the day. I am determined to finish this book today. Well, I kind of have to because book club is literally tomorrow. But I have less than 100 pages left. Let's actually see how many pages I have left. 80-ish pages. So I'm just going to sit down and read this morning. I don't know if I'll get it done in one sitting. We'll see. I don't know like how to describe my feelings. I think the main thing about this book is I just really seem to feel the emotions that the characters are feeling. I don't know why I feel so like deeply with this book. I really don't know why, but like the feelings that the characters are feeling, like they are really hitting me deep. And there's been some sad things that have happened in the last little bit that I've read. And I'm finding it really hard to pick up the book now because I don't want to feel the sadness that the characters are feeling. And I know that whenever I go back into this book, I'm gonna have to deal with them dealing with what they have to deal with. Does that make sense? And I just like don't want to because it makes me feel sad, but I'm hoping and praying there's a happy ending. I really, really hope there's a happy ending. I feel like with general fiction, you never know what to expect. So I think I've been like kind of putting it off, but it's time. I need to do it. I feel like this is written so beautifully. Even just like very simple sentences are written so beautifully. Like, let me read you one. It's like not a spoiler. He neither understood nor did he have time to deeply contemplate what was happening inside of her. Like, he didn't say he was confused with how she was feeling. He neither understood nor did he have the time to deeply contemplate what was happening inside of her. Like, what a way to word something. I love it. I'm in pain, like, I'm in pain. Sam didn't know if Sadie wanted him to visit, and he had always been bad at going places where he was not certain he was wanted. Guys, I'm currently reading part 9 called Pioneers, and tell me why this is like the most genius sentimental thing I've ever read. Like the amount of like Easter eggs and like tiny little details that are mentioned in this chapter that reference previous things in the book. I love it so much. Like I feel like this chapter specifically like perfectly balances like sadness and happiness together. Like there's really a bit of both. And I just think it's so smart of the author to write a chapter in this way. I obviously don't want to say exactly what's happening because it's a spoiler, but if you've read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm just about to start the final part 10, Freights and Grooves. I think I have roughly, let's see, about 30 pages left. I'm kind of, I don't know what to expect from the end, so let's see. Last page. As you guys saw in the last clip, I finished this book and right as I finished it, my camera died. But we're back. It's a few days later. I feel like I've really processed this book. And guys, this book was phenomenal. Like truly so good. I am shocked with how much I liked it, which I shouldn't say that because I feel like this is such a well-loved book. Like I don't know why I'm shocked that I enjoyed it, but again, it's just like not my typical genre, so I really didn't know what to expect going into this, but I absolutely adored it. I feel like this book, I don't even know what to say. And it's funny because this was our book club book and I always do a little like slideshow for our book club. And when I'm prepping for that slideshow, I'll usually watch a bunch of interviews or podcasts that feature the author if I can find any. And I was watching a bunch of interviews with Gabrielle Zevin, and every time she's asked to explain this book, she's always like, oh, I feel like there's no great way to explain what this book is. I think she says something along the lines of, this book is a book about friendship, video games, love, something else maybe, something along those lines. And that is just like not a good description while it's also the perfect description, because this book is just so many things and so layered and so thought-provoking and so emotional and I loved it and I hated it and it tore me apart and it put me back together. Like it was so good, and I'm shocked at how well written it was and how well put together it was. And it felt like this book probably took like 20 years to write, with just like how many layers it had and how much depth it had, but it was written in like 4 years or something like that. But I just don't even know like what to say about it to convince you to read this. I do think it's kind of one of those books that some people like it and some people just don't. Like you're either going to connect to it or you don't, and there's no like right or wrong way to feel, obviously, because everyone has different tastes. But I feel really lucky that I connected to this because it was such like a beautiful book to feel connected to and to just like fall in love with. I loved our main characters. I hated our main characters. I loved the storyline. I hated the storyline. It made me sad and frustrated, and yet like so happy and so joyful and satisfied. Like I loved the ending. I feel like I'm not doing a good job explaining my thoughts on this because I just don't even know how. Because I'm filming this clip a couple days after finishing the book, I've already had book club and we had the best discussion ever for this book. It's really interesting because this is our third book that we've read together for book club, so third month. And before this book, we have all had very different ratings to all the books we've read. So the first 2 books we've read, some of us loved it, some of us didn't like it, which is really fun because when you're discussing books, it's really fun to have some people who like it, some people who don't, and like to have all these different thoughts. But this time we all rated this book between 4 and 5 stars. I still don't know exactly what my rating is. I think it's like 4.5, 4.75. If I keep thinking about it, I'll bump it up to 5 stars, but it was just absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, this is the first time where we've all collectively just been so obsessed with the book, and our discussions were just so interesting, and it was so fun to discuss the characters and the storyline and all the tiny little details that Gabrielle Zevin wove throughout this story. And I feel like when I decided that I wanted to film this video, I was hoping this would happen. I was hoping I would pick up these books that I've been putting off for a really long time, and I would pick them up and I'd just be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this has been sitting on my shelf for this long without me picking it up, because it was amazing. And that's exactly how I felt with this, which I'm so thankful for. Also though, I wish I'd read it so much earlier, but also I'm so glad that I waited, especially because it was our book club pick and I got to discuss it with like a bunch of my besties and we just had the best discussion. Like it would have been so sad if I read this and none of my friends had read it and I couldn't like discuss it in person with them. But yeah, I can't believe this was on my shelf for so long, and it was literally so good. So if this has been sitting on your shelf for a while and you haven't picked it up, please do, because obviously there's a chance that you might not enjoy it, you might not connect to it, which is so fine, but there's also a chance that you might have the same experience as me and a bunch of my friends where we just absolutely like, we loved it so much. Moving on to book number 2. I think I'm going to read one of the books that has been on my TBR for the longest, and that is One Day by David Nichols. I have been avoiding this book for so long. I put it on multiple TBRs, never read it. I've read books that have been compared to this book and I didn't like them, so I have kind of put this off because I'm scared it's going to be similar to the books that I didn't like. But I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, I just need to at least try reading this and like give it a chance, and if I don't like it, that's okay, I can DNF it, but at least I've got it off my TBR because I'm sick of seeing it there and I just need to give it a chance. It could be phenomenal. I feel like I've heard mixed reviews, so I really don't know what to expect, but I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to try it and we'll see how we feel. If you don't know what this book is about, I think it's going to be a pretty emotional romance. It says 20 years, 2 people. I think it's about people who either like meet up on the same day every year or keep running into each other throughout their lives. Like I don't exactly know. I think there's a movie as well. I haven't seen it. I'll update you guys when I know a bit more about this. Reading update, I've read 3 chapters, 50 pages, which is obviously not a lot, but I'm not gonna lie guys, I'm not really enjoying this. I am just not clicking with this book. Like I think I'm gonna give it 100 pages, and if I still feel the way that I do right now, I'm gonna DNF it because it's just not, I'm not having fun, and life is too short to read books that you're not enjoying. I will say the writing itself is very beautiful. Like there's a lot of very beautiful one-liners that I could annotate, but as a whole, like the plot and the way the plot is written, I'm just not a huge fan of. I just don't think it clicks with my brain. We meet our 2 main characters the night of their college graduation, and it basically seems like they're having a bit of like a one-night stand. I don't think they really knew each other before that night, apart from that they like knew of each other because they went to college together. And so you meet them when they're already like together. Like you don't get to see them kind of getting to the point of where they end up in the room together. Like you just start the book and they're in this room together, which is already just like not my favorite thing, because I feel like the falling in love and the meeting and the talking and like those sorts of moments are so beautiful to watch, and we didn't get any of that. And yes, you get like a sentence here or there where they're like, oh, I know I was at the party and I saw him, but it's a lot of telling, not a lot of showing. And at the end of the first chapter, the girl says to the guy, do you want to hang out tomorrow? And in his head, we know that he's kind of like, I don't really want any sort of like strings attached, like I don't really want to do that. But for some reason he's like, yeah, let's hang out. And in her head we can tell that she really likes this guy and she really wants to spend more time with him. And then the first chapter ends, and then the second chapter begins, and it's exactly 1 year later, which I've now found that every time we start a new chapter, we're 1 year in the future. So we start the second chapter, it's a year later, they're both kind of doing their own thing. The guy is traveling and the girl is doing some performing in a small theater company, and they have basically become pen pals because the guy is traveling a lot. But we get to see a glimpse into what their life looks like, and then the next chapter is a year later and we get another glimpse into what their life looks like, and obviously so on and so forth. But there's a lot of mentioning of things that have happened that we don't get to see, and that is really frustrating me. Like for example, in the second chapter they discuss what they ended up doing after graduation, like as in the days that they spent together after graduation, what they did. We get like a paragraph where that sort of stuff is mentioned, but again, it is told, it's not shown. And the stuff mentioned in that paragraph, I'm like, oh, that sounds so cute, like they go to the pool and they play tennis together and blah 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 blah. And I just really would have liked to have read about that, not just like read one paragraph. Again, like telling, not showing. I hope that makes sense. And I think because of that, I'm just like not vibing with it. I don't care about either of the characters as individuals, and I don't care about them as like a couple. And I mean, so far they're obviously not even in a couple because they're both like doing their own things, and we're just like kind of getting glimpses into their life as the years progress, like what they're getting up to. And like it's nice in some ways because I'm like, oh, it's nice to see them in their early to mid 20s when they don't know what they're doing with their life, and they discuss that in the letters that they're writing to each other. But at the same time, like I just don't really care because I don't even know these characters. Like I don't feel connected to them in any way, and I don't really know why. I think it's just the way it's been written. I don't think it's for me. But again, I'm 50 pages in, I'm gonna give it 50 more pages, and if I still feel the same, I'm gonna DNF it, or at least put it down and maybe pick it up at some other point in time. But I'm sad because I really hoped I would just fall in love with this, because I know a lot of people really like it, but I just feel like I'm not really like clicking with it. I give up. I'm not into it, guys. I'm sorry. I feel like a lot of the time when people DNF books, it's like, oh, there's this one trope in it that I really don't like, or there's this one part that really just like didn't sit right with me and I didn't want to keep reading it. And I don't have anything like that. I don't care about these characters and it just seems like it's going to be one of those books where you're following two characters throughout their life, but if you don't care about the characters, you're not going to enjoy the book. So I'm going to give this one a soft DNF. I'm going to put on my bookshelf. If I want to pick it up at another point in time, I will. But for now, I'm just not into it. So that's kind of sad, but that's also kind of like the point of this video. Like I said, when I was talking about tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, I'm really hoping that there are some books that I pick up where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this was sitting on my TBR card for this long because it was so good. I can't believe I didn't pick it up earlier. But I also know that there will be some books that I pick up and I'm like, this is why I put it off for so long. It's just not a book for me. And so far in this video, we've had one of each of those, which I guess is bound to happen. Like you have some wins, you have some losses, and that's just how it's gonna be. I don't know if I want to pick up another one right now. I'll update you guys when I decide to read another book that I've been avoiding. Good morning, my sweet friends. It is a new day and we are gonna try and read another book that I've been avoiding, and hopefully we'll have better luck this time. Here is the TBR card, and I wanted to talk through a few of the options that we have. Some of these aren't necessarily like avoiding because I'm scared of reading them. It's just like they've been on my TBR for so long and I need to get them off because I keep buying new books and reading new books and not the books that have been on my TBR for a long time. So I feel like I could do part 2 to this video, part 3, part 4, part 5, because there are quite a few. I feel like one that stands out to me is All the Light We Cannot See. I've had this on my TBR for quite a while. I've heard incredible things about this. I think it's like a historical fiction. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I don't really know too much about it, to be honest. Another one that really stands out to me is The Song of Achilles. I've had this on my TBR since I think 2021 and I still also haven't read it. I think this is just one of those ones that's so hyped up that it has like scared me because I'm like, what if I don't like it? Open Water is another one that's been on. I mean, this hasn't been there as long. I think it's been there for about a year maybe. I've heard incredible things about this. It's really short. I don't know why I haven't picked this up yet, and I definitely really want to really soon. Actually, no, I do know why I haven't picked this up. I think I'm a bit intimidated because I think this is more of like a literary fiction / general fiction. And sometimes those are written so beautifully, but also like they're kind of hard for me to kind of wrap my head around. Like they're not so mindless, which I know is a good thing and I know that's important, but that just kind of intimidates me a bit. The Family Doctor is one that I'm kind of considering unhauling because I just never feel like picking this up again. I think I've had it on my TBR I think since 2021. I think it's like a domestic thriller and I just like, I started it once. I think I got like 50 pages in and I just like didn't care. I should maybe give it another shot at some point, but right now I'm just like, oh, should I just unhaul it? Because I like don't really ever feel like picking it up. Ninth House, another one that I really want to pick up at some point, but I'm really intimidated by it because I've heard people say it's quite like difficult to understand and I just don't know if I'm smart enough, really. We also have Slow Days Fast Company, Eve Babbitt's really short little book, but again, it's more of that like general fiction vibe that I don't know if I'm smart enough to like really delve into. And the one that I think I'm going to pick up today, I think, is More Than Words by Mia Sheridan. This is one that doesn't necessarily intimidate me. I don't know why it's been on my TBR for so long, but it's probably one of the oldest books on this TBR cart, so I feel like it's one that I really want to get to because it'll just feel so satisfying to tick off. I really enjoy Mia Sheridan. I think I've read 4 of her books, so this will be the 5th. I've read Archer's Voice, which I love. I've read it twice. I've also read Travis, Kyland, and Most of All You. Yeah, and I've really enjoyed all of them, some more than others. I think Archer's Voice is definitely my favorite, then Most of All You, then maybe Kyland and Travis are kind of like tied. I don't quite know, but yeah, I haven't read this yet. It's been on my TBR for a long time. I think it's like childhood friends to lovers. It honestly sounds really good, so I think I'm just gonna give it a shot. I think it's not like too long either. It's like 320 pages. I'm gonna give it a shot. Usually Mia Sheridan writes pretty emotional romances. They tend to kind of break your heart and put it back together. And Mia Sheridan often writes characters that have a lot of trauma, which I feel like can be good or bad. I feel like it's good because you get such an emotional connection to the characters, and I feel like the more connected you are to a character, the better. Especially in a romance. If you don't like the characters in a romance, it's kind of hard to enjoy the story. But sometimes it is a bit like, is this really necessary? You know? Or like, can't we just talk about this or go to therapy? So we'll see where this one sits in that spectrum. Hopefully we don't have another DNF on our hands. I'll be so sad if that's the case. But at the very least, we'll get another book off the TBR card, and that is a win. A win is a win, you know? Okay, let's go start this. How perfectly does my bookmark charm match this book? So cute. I'll try and remember to link the shop where this is from down below because this is like my favorite bookmark ever. It's so cute. It says, in my book era, but I just got to chapter 10, which is page 109. So we're over 100 pages into this book. I think I mentioned before I started this book that it's like a childhood friends to lovers situation, and that's definitely the case. However, we don't spend that much time reading about their childhood. The prologue is the only part of the book that is like set back when they were kids. So I think they meet when they're like 11 or 12 and they kind of both start hanging out. They both kind of have difficult family situations, so obviously they really enjoy hanging out together and kind of just like getting out of the house, getting out of those difficult situations, and they become friends pretty quickly. We pretty much only get like 20 pages of their childhood, so it's not a lot. But I think that 20 pages kind of goes over about 2 years of them being friends as kids. And then something happens and they don't see each other. And then the book flashes forward 10 years, so they're both like in their mid-20s pretty much. And they haven't seen each other since they were kids. But coincidentally, there's actually a few times that they see each other. Like they kind of just end up in the same place at the same time, which is so unrealistic in this scenario because they're both American and they're both like in different parts of France, like multiple locations in France at the same time, the exact same time. Like the chances of that actually happening, I feel like are so low, but they also kind of mention that in the book. They're like, this is so crazy. And I'm like, yes, it's literally so crazy. Like that would just simply not happen, I feel like. Specifically the fact that it happened like multiple times, but again, it's a book, so. But apart from that, I honestly am quite enjoying it. I think it's really interesting. I'm not like obsessed with it. I don't think it's going to be a new 5-star read, but I am enjoying it. I'm having a good time. It is very cliche, and there's a few times where I'm like, oh, it's a bit cringy, but like nothing too bad. Like I'm not annoyed at the characters. When I say cliche, it's very much like good girl, bad boy. It's kind of like the one that got away vibes. Like, oh, what could have happened if we had stayed in each other's lives, which
I mean, that's very like second chance romance vibes, so that's understandable. Like, I should have expected that going into it. And it's like the classic every girl wants this guy except for our female main character. Like, she's very much like, oh, you're a player. I don't think we're the same people that we used to be, you know, like, let's just move on with our lives separately. And that makes like him want her even more, of course, classic. But again, like, even though it's a bit cliche, I'm still quite enjoying it. I'm still finding it quite interesting. I like that it's set, a lot of it at least, is set in France. I mean, so far it is. And I really like that our female main character is really into history. She started this new job where she's looking at all of these really old documents, and that actually is really interesting to me, which I didn't think it would be. And then our male main character is in the music industry. He's a composer, and I'm really hoping we get to see a bit more of that because we haven't really seen too much so far. His storyline is kind of giving me August Rush vibes. If you guys watched August Rush, like, that was one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. I haven't seen it in a really long time though. But just like how he just like picks up a guitar and he's just like so good at it naturally and just ends up being this like prodigy. I'm assuming that's kind of the vibe that our male main character is supposed to be kind of emulating. But yeah, I find their like backgrounds and their like careers, I guess, really, really interesting. And I feel like it makes the story quite unique. But I'm going to keep reading it. I feel like Mia Sheridan's writing is just so easy to read. And I'm very intrigued to see where the author takes the storyline. I don't know. I'm hoping I get a little bit like shocked. Like, I'm hoping that it doesn't follow a super like stereotypical plot line. Hopefully I'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming, but we'll see.
I know it's kind of toxic of me, but there is something that gets me every time with an MMC that has trauma. Why do they get me every time? The FMC just said to him, I think you sell yourself short, Callan Hayes. And he replies by saying, you always thought far too much of me, Jesse. I'm catching feels. I really thought this was going to be like a 3-star read, and now I'm starting to be like, oh, I actually kind of like them. Kind of really like them together. To be fair, he also started off as a player, and we're starting to slowly get a tiny bit of character development, and I love character development. I think I'm almost halfway through. This is just so easy to read, guys. Stop. She grinned and my heart flipped. She was the prettiest thing I'd ever seen. See, this book is difficult because it has me like swooning a little bit, but then it'll have me cringing. And I'm like, oh, like I can't tell how I feel about it. Do you know what I mean? Also, I really hate the like, I'm a bad boy and you're so innocent. Oh, I hate that. I hate that. This book isn't doing it like heaps, but it has moments of it, and I don't like that. I'm currently reading about the two main characters going on a date, and they're sitting outside having this really romantic time, and then it starts raining, and it literally just started raining. Like, can you hear that? Like, it started raining in real life as soon as they mentioned rain in the book, and that is insane. Very atmospheric. Can't complain. I only have one room available. It's our smallest one, but I hope that'll be okay. Classic. Officially made it past the 200-page mark. I have about 120 pages left. I'm like, will I finish this today? Like, start and finish it. I wasn't intending to do that, but I've just kind of been like picking up this book periodically throughout the day, to be fair. I haven't had many plans today, so it's been very easy to just like come back and read 50 pages here and there, and it's so readable. So I don't know, maybe I'll finish it today. I really wasn't expecting that at all. Obviously it's not that long of a book, but it's turning into a bit of a binge read, which I'm not mad at. Finished More Than Words. Honestly, that was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. There were definitely some parts that I didn't like love, and I feel like the ending was so close to being so good, and then there was something that happened that I was like, not my favorite, but still mostly good. It was really sweet, and I think if you had connected more to the characters than I did, or like more to the story emotionally, you would really, really like it. But I think just because I didn't have that really deep connection, I don't know why, I just like, you know how you just feel it or you don't? Like, I feel like you can't choose that with the book. You just feel it or you don't feel it. And I enjoyed it, but I didn't quite feel that like heart-wrenching feeling that I feel like this book was trying to emulate. But I still really enjoyed it. I'd probably give it maybe a 3.75. Obviously I just finished it, so I prefer to let my feelings settle a little bit. I really liked that most of it was set in France. I thought that was so beautiful. I was about to say, I feel like I could imagine it so well. I've never been to France, but like it felt like a movie in my brain. All of the different places that they went and the places where they were staying, like this hotel they were staying in was like this castle kind of vibe. And in the end, there's like specific things that happen. And I feel like I could really like see those scenes so clearly in my head, which I feel like happens a lot with Mia Sheridan's writing for me. I feel like I remember Archer's voice. I have such like clear images in my brain of what certain things looked like and what certain scenes looked like. So overall, pretty good. I'm so happy I read it. This has been on my TBR, I think, almost 2 years, so I'm very happy that I've read this. I am so glad that I filmed this video. I feel so accomplished getting 3 books off my TBR that I've been avoiding, that I've been putting off, that have just been on my TBR for so long. Like, this just feels so good. And obviously we had an amazing read, a not so amazing read, and one that kind of sits right in the middle. And I'm honestly really happy with that outcome. Obviously this was by far my favorite book I picked up in this video. It was absolutely phenomenal. Cannot recommend it enough. I absolutely adored this. I think it is a 5-star read for me, because the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, wow, this was so good. And then obviously we had this one, which I did DNF, but maybe I'll pick it up at some other point. We'll see how it goes. If you've read this and you loved it, I would love to hear your thoughts, or maybe you can convince me to pick this up again. But you know what, at least it's not on my TBR anymore, so a win is a win. And then obviously lastly we have More Than Words, which I think after sitting on this for a while, I'm gonna give it a 3.5. I thought it was good but not amazing. There were a lot of things I liked about it, but also a lot of things that I didn't love, so I think a 3.5 just feels right to me. But overall I just feel so happy to have these off my TBR. If you would like to see this as a bit of a series on my channel, please let me know, where we kind of just like work through some of those books that have been on my TBR for a long time. And if there are any specific books you would love to see in a future version of this video, I know you're all gonna say Song of Achilles, but if there is anything you want to see specifically, please let me know. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching this and just enjoyed hanging out with me while I've read for the last like week or 2. But I love you guys so much. I hope you all have a fantastic day or night whenever you're watching this, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.